Thank you for being here in person. Thank you to everyone watching online. Really appreciate your involvement in the selection of our next superintendent. My name is Kristin Vincent. I'm the vice chair of the Westborough School Committee. I just want to give a few thank yous out to Mill Pond staff and custodians for hosting us tonight, getting this set up, for Westborough TV for broadcasting and recording the forum. And a big thank you to our school leaders and central office staff for welcoming and hosting our candidates today. They spent the day visiting the schools and in the district. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. You might not hear your exact question being asked. There were a lot of questions, and so we tried to pull together themes and topics that were similar into one or several questions. As a reminder, the school committee wants your feedback, so we invite Westborough parents, school, and other town staff, and all our community members to share feedback with us on all three candidates. A link to a feedback form was sent out via Parent Square, and you can also find it on the homepage of the Westborough website, which is westboroughk12.org. And it's the first item listed under what's happening, and you can submit your feedback through that form. The form will remain open till tomorrow night at midnight, so we want to give folks a chance to watch the recording in case they can't be here live or watch it live.
It's like American Idol.
It sure is. So please join me in welcoming our first candidate of the night, Kristin DeFrancisco.
It's fun to kick off the night. I appreciate that you all came out in the cold, and I know you could have watched it at home on TV. Hello to those of you who made that choice to watch at home on TV. My name is Kristin DeFrancisco. I lovingly say I have 2,402 children. 2 of them are mine that live with me at home. And the other 2,400 go to school in Groton-Dunstable, which is where I currently work right now. But I'll back up a little bit and give you a little information about just me as personally, and then also me professionally. I do have 2 children, as I mentioned. One is a junior at Fairfield University studying to be a nurse. Nurses' stories might be the only stories that trump educator stories. That's a debate going on in our house now. She comes home with quite interesting stories as she learns to be a nurse. And then the other is an 18-year-old daughter who is graduating from Arlington High School at the end of this school year, and she will be learning to be a graphic designer with a minor in communications at a university to be named at a later time when she decides which one is going to put us into a little bit of further debt, because we'll have both of them in college at the same time. I don't do that by myself. My husband Rob is a project manager. He works for Point32 Health, which is formerly Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim Health. They merged together. So he works from home and takes care of, during the day, our golden doodle, Winnie, who didn't doodle. So she's really looks like a golden retriever. And as I've been joking all day long, her strength is shedding. She was not supposed to do that, but she does. Those 2 girls really helped me not only be a great mom, but also be a great professional in education. Both different learners, took different paths to learning. So they really helped me professionally think about how I was going to make different paths for students. First in classrooms. So I taught 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, not necessarily in that order, I just made them numerical. So I've been in middle schools and I've been in elementary schools for all of my teaching career. And that doesn't change about the administrative side of me either. I was a principal at Hardy Elementary School in Arlington, same school I taught in. So that was a unique experience for me to go from teacher to the evaluator and the supervisor of all of my colleagues that I taught with. And then I had the very unique and wonderful experience of opening a 6th grade only school. So that's 500 6th graders, 11-year-olds in one place. And what was really great about that is it was only the 2nd 6th grade only school in Massachusetts. And I got to design the programming there to be very developmentally appropriate. So lots of project-based learning, advisory every single day. We really built the schedule around what students need to know and be able to do, as opposed to the other way around. So really great opportunity for me to bring 2 staffs together, the one that existed in Arlington and all of the people that I hired toward that vision and mission of a real developmentally appropriate middle space of learning for students. And then I got the opportunity to be the assistant superintendent in Groton-Dunstable. And why that's been great is because a little smaller than here, 2,400 students, there's 4,000 about in Westborough, there's 6,000 in Arlington. So you're nested right in between the two spaces where I've done most of my work. The advantage of being in a smaller regional school district is I get to do everything. So not only do I get to work in the curriculum instruction and assessment space and really help folks understand what that developmental space needs to look like in pre-K through 22, but I also get to learn how to be a superintendent there. So for those 4 years, this was always my end game. And that opportunity really aligned well for me to be able to stand in front of you and hopefully answer your questions in ways that make you confident that that place will be here in Westborough. Lots of fiscal management, lots of relationships with town folks and the municipalities, and I think I met every single one of them today. And it was lovely to do that. But I know we have limited time, and I'm very shy, as you can tell, so I could talk all evening long if you want to start with questions.
No, that was perfect. That was a great introduction. So I have a question that came through to us from a community member.
Sure.
And could you share more about really the first job that launched your career in education, and how did that lay a foundation for where you are today, and how those early experiences influence your next step as superintendent?
What a great question. I often think about my first class of students and where they are. Actually, I know where a lot of them are today because they've kept in touch with me, which is really a great experience to have. What launched my first year that I didn't mention, I taught in a private school. When I graduated from Regis College in 1996, and I'm only 30, so you can figure the math out on that one. In 1996, when I graduated, did you go to Regis College also? Yeah, really great. When I graduated, I won't tell. When I graduated, jobs were not easy to get. The market was really difficult, so I just felt blessed that I found a job at a Catholic school. I think I was being paid $2.50 an hour. I didn't care. I was going to live with my parents. That's what I needed to do, and that was my first foray into education. And I said to myself, I'm gonna stay here 1 year. I'm gonna learn how to be a good grade 6th grade teacher, and then I'm gonna try to get into the public school sector. Teaching in classrooms taught me how important it is to be a good listener, and how important it is to not always show up thinking you have the answers before you've heard, what the people in front of you have to say. And I learned that from kids. Right, so if you stop talking long enough, they'll tell you what they need. And so that's what I learned how to do in classrooms, is to stop talking long enough so that kids could really tell me what they need. And they do a better job at that than adults do. No offense to all of you. We grow out of that habit, I think. But that's one of the things that really made me want to continue in teaching, is to continue to be around children that would, if I listened hard enough, would tell me what they needed. So that's why I kept going with it. It's great. Been going good for 27 years.
So this question came in from many parents, lots of versions of this question. What does diversity mean to you? And could you please share an example of your actions to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in classrooms and schools?
Great, I knew I was going to be asked this question. This is probably the 4th time. This is important to your community. I know that because this is probably the 4th or 5th time I've been asked this question today. And I will get back around to define what diversity means to me personally, but I think what's more important to know is, for somebody who's going to lead in your district, what diversity, equity, and inclusion is in the community. And the different communities that I've worked in, it's different in every single place. So coming from a common understanding of what we mean when we say diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important. Me personally, diversity means lots of things. When a school is a conglomeration of or a coming together of all of those things. So we talk about racial diversity and equity. We talk about neurodiversity and students that come into school maybe needing some cognitive support. We talk about where students live. We don't all live in the same places or come to school having had the same things in our homes. our families don't look alike. Some of us might be struggling with our identity. Those are all examples of diversity. And I think that the most important word in the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece is the inclusion piece. How are you from top down and bottom up setting spaces for students to learn where when they walk into the classroom or the learning space, they feel like they can exhale because they see either themselves somewhere or they understand that their narrative or their story is going to be listened to, or there's materials in front of them with people that learn like them or look like them. Our libraries are full of books where they can go and read about other people's stories, but also their own stories. Diversity, equity, so that's the first thing I do when I work with a group of people is really talk about what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to the group I'm working with. Everybody comes with a story and a narrative. This is when the leaning in and listening is really important. Because if you do that and you give people the opportunity to tell you their stories, you'll learn what they need. And I think sometimes we try to over-solution until we really listen and know what people are looking for us to do. There's more to that question, I can't remember what it is.
An example of your actions to prioritize diversity.
So lots of different ways that I've done that throughout the district that I'm in now. I'll rest there because I know we don't have a lot of time. World of Difference is a wonderful program. I don't know if it's here in Westborough, but World of Difference, and if the students were here, they'd say, you better say it's a movement, not a club. And it is a movement. It's a group through the Anti-Defamation League that gives students agency and voice. So we started a World of Difference, not a club, a movement in the high school and in the middle school space so that we can really have kids' action around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We need to listen to the children talk about their stories and their experiences in school. The other thing that I've done in Groton-Dunstable is I am the liaison for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory to the school committee. And what that basically means is I sit in on those meetings so that it doesn't become they're going to talk at the advisory, they're going to go to the school committee is going to advise the district is going to go back. We've cut out all that middle process and I'm in the meetings. So I'm able to bring back a lot of the initiatives. Something that we're working on right now is our website and really making sure that the diversity, equity, and inclusion page is not only what do we do or what do parents do when they maybe need to have a difficult conversation with a student with something that maybe has happened in school, but it also is a celebration of what the community is made up of. Before that, it looked like when you went to that diversity, equity, and inclusion page, it looked a little bit like you only went there if there was an emergency. And that's certainly not what we want to portray about our districts. Those pages should be celebratory of the things that we're doing, like the holiday stroll through World of Difference that we had at our school. I also started they named it themselves, a Council for Student Voice at the high school. And right now there's 4 seniors leading that club, and they have a Google Classroom where they meet with probably about 50, 60 of the students. And they came to me and they said, Mrs. DeFrancisco, we're really excited to be working with you on this, but if you come to the meetings, they're not going to tell you anything. They'll tell us everything, though. I said, well, I don't want to put you in a position where you're coming back and sort of being the mole to the admit. They're like, no, we love this. This is great. So being able to really have the voice of our oldest students to talk about their experience throughout their time at the school district has been valuable. I've also gotten them, I wrote them all letters of recommendation on the condition that they would come back after their first semester of college and really talk about how GD prepared them. The real ways that when they come back, they say, we could do this because we lived in GD or we went to school here, and here are the things that we were missing out on. So I think it's really important to think about not just the community diversity, but where they're going with it. I could talk about that all day. Okay, go, I'm ready.
Okay, so this question came from many people, different versions of this question. What would be your initial plan to engage with Westborough families and learn more about our community?
Okay, so I just talked a little bit about that. I love an advisory or a council when we can have that. So I would really be interested in thinking about an advisory to the superintendent. I don't know if you already have one. You know, sometimes districts will have them, but they're internal. They're made up of staff. So I'd really be interested in having a advisory that was made up of the community. I also find that it's extremely important to offer different times of the day and different places for meetings up with the superintendent. So coffees, luncheons, dinners, I'll come to town day, I will go to games. It's really hard for me to, I love it, but if you catch me watching kids sing, I will cry. That is the only thing that I can't do and fix my face because it's just very moving. But you know, attending all of those different spaces where you live and where you are, I think is really important. I've already frequented your Starbucks quite a bit. I sit at the table up in the front corner if you ever see me there waiting in between. So yes, being out and about in the community I think is a really important thing. I'm well aware that a superintendent's job is not Monday through Friday, school hours, right? So in order to get in, really be with the community, I need to be present and visible after those spaces. So a council. The other advisories that I run is a culture and climate committee, which is made up of different stakeholders. So parents are part of that committee, and we started a 360 survey. So we did a lot of work with thinking about how are we going to get feedback from the community so I would know what you would want my involvement and my help with. And that way I'm getting some data to think about at the beginning where it will be very busy. I'll be meeting a lot of different people in an entry plan. How I make sure I target where are the most important places where I make sure I'm showing up in the community. So that would just be some examples.
A question from a teacher.
Oh, great.
What does high quality instruction look like in a classroom in 2024? And what are the indicators of great teaching and learning?
Oh, wow. How long do I have for that? The high quality instructional materials is a big deal right now. It's a big deal for lots of reasons, and I think, you know, I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say that there's some legislation that has come out and said, you know, you need to use this thing. This is the thing that is gonna help you have high quality instruction. I push back on that a little bit because the thing that's going to help with high quality instruction is teachers. It is important that they be supported and they have the materials and that the materials that they use are scientifically accurate and updated and so that they're supported and they can do their work, but the teachers are the people who make it high quality instruction. So my approach to high quality instruction is to really think about how am I helping principals through a supervision and evaluation process that's a little bit more personal, right? So how are we writing goals and how are we talking about what I like to call the 8 look-fors? And in Groton-Dunstable, we have decided upon 8 look-fors. I won't list all of them down now, but those 8 look-fors, you should be able to find those pre-K to 12. I'll give you a few examples. One would be when you walk into the classroom, the space matters. How it's designed matters for access to learning. So that would be one of the look-fors. Another would be student agency. If you're hearing a lot of teacher talking and not a lot of student doing and learning, that looks like high quality. So we would want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're engaging students. So it would be a second look-for. And there's 8 of them. And what we've done in Groton-Dunstable is we've actually paired up folks, not just administrators, but administrators and teachers. And so they're walking around the classroom and they're identifying some of those look-fors. And they come back into the space where we're working as a leadership team and really talk about how to make those pervasive. So the high quality instruction needs to come in the delivery. The materials, and they didn't ask this specifically, but I wonder if they're talking about reading. That seems to, did reading come up in that question?
It was really just about high quality instruction and great teaching and learning. So,
yeah. So, and great teaching and learning looks like, again, leaning in to listen, more student doing than teacher talking, I think is really important. Student agency is really important, building the independence and that release of responsibility. Yes.
From a parent, AI, artificial intelligence,
I was waiting for this question all day.
is quickly becoming an everyday part of our lives. How do you view the role that AI may play in education for both staff and students?
Okay. So I'll do the staff one first because that's easier. So I'll pick that one first. If we're not careful, we'll take AI and all the things that worry us about AI and miss out on some pretty actually great opportunities. One of the things that I'm trying to work through in Groton-Dunstable is if you have a classroom of students and you understand and really know you have a data source that's really telling you where they are, where their reading level is, you can put a text into AI and it will spit it back at all those reading levels. So now you're putting in front of something in front of students where they can feel successful, they can gain confidence in reading, and they can start to build some of those skills they're going to need to access even harder texts. So that's one example. The other example of AI is when you get data from, let's say you're going to take a survey in a classroom, you can put that data through AI and it's going to tell you all of the themes that are showing up in your classroom, right? All of the things that you should be targeting in instruction. So I do think it can be a really good tool. I also feel like it's like the 2024 version of either the cell phone or the internet. We've done this before. This is just in a new way, right? So it would be my expectation that students would hand in their own work. So I'm going to cut right to that chase. That would be my expectation, that students hand in their own work. And some of the ways that I've asked students to think about some of these tools is, how could you use it as a tool? What are the ways we could teach it as a tool? But we do have expectations. I'm not grading, I am not giving feedback to AI. I know it knows the thing. It can spit it out at you. I'm giving feedback to you. So it's new, so I'm not sure how this will all sort of fold itself out. And I also know that it's not always 100% of the way updated. Sometimes you'll get students who really are like, I'm not using that. I don't want it to be wrong. What if it's not updated? So I think that there's more caution in kids than we think there is. And I also think that there's ways to use that AI so that they cannot actually give you the answer to the question if you've written it well enough, that you really need to, they really need to use their own critical thinking skills in order to get you the answer.
So from a few teachers and parents, this question, Westborough has one of the state's top achieving fine and performing arts programs. In what ways do you envision yourself as an advocate so that the district can continue to grow as leaders in music and fine arts education? So first you'd come and cry.
First I come and cry, yes, and then after I pull myself together after listening to them, my parents would be so proud. I am a classically trained clarinetist. Do I play anymore? Gosh, no, I really wish I did play. But I did. I played clarinet for 14 years. So the music for me was a big part of, it was my social life at school. It was my place where I felt like I had strengths. It taught me how to perform in front, taught me how to do this and not be afraid when I look out into an audience and there's lots of people waiting to see what I'm going to do. So they're near and dear to my heart. I also feel like when we talk about social emotional learning, when we talk about creating a culture and climate in the building, a lot of students show up for that. They show up for fine arts, they show up to be in the art classroom, they show up to be in the music classroom. That's the place where we can actually learn how to, from those teachers and from those individuals, to lean in and listen and build relationships with students. That's something that happens pretty automatically there. So big proponent of the arts. I was really encouraged to see when I moved around, Principal Foley talked to me about how the kids not only have ensemble, but they also have small group, which I think is really important. If you want to have fine performing arts, you need to get them in their smaller groups so that they can work instrument alike or voice alike or part alike, and then figure out how that fits into the bigger picture, right? Talk about a life skill there. How do I do what I do in order to make the big, to be part of a bigger piece, so the macro and the micro. So you've already really got your schedule, especially in the middle school space, set up for success there. And I'm not sure if you participate in districts or if you participate in, I also Bye Bye Birdie is happening at one of the schools. I might have to come back and see that too, so yeah.
That's great. Thanks. Just so you know, there's only 2 questions left.
Oh, okay.
So, doing great. Perfect.
What do I have for time? I have to win.
Perfect timing.
Okay, good.
So here's a question that we got from a lot of teachers, parents, community members. How would you approach navigating opposing viewpoints among families, teachers, or the community at large to continue a positive, inclusive, and safe environment for our students and staff?
That's not a hard one at all. I think, again, I'm going to link back to the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. When you're thinking about a match for your district for the superintendency, you hire somebody to represent all of your students, not some of them, right? All students, the students that show up maybe that don't look like the typical what we would think, how kids would show up to school. So I think how I would navigate that is, again, I'd be a listener. Everybody, behavior has a reason. People show up with their viewpoints for a reason. And they may not be someone else's viewpoints. My job is to stay in the middle of that and really listen to both sides of that story. And I know sometimes that will come up in public forums, and I understand that, that's happening in lots of districts. So being a listener and really trying to listen and educate, I wouldn't want that to be the first time I was developing a relationship with folks though, right? So in order to have the hard conversations, I feel like you have to have had other conversations. So how am I plugging in to building relationships with people that have different viewpoints? One of the things I did in Groton-Dunstable, what we brought into, I've written the strategic plans. This is what I mean about a small district. You get to do all of the things. The strategic plan is around a multi-tiered system of support. And I bring that up because our theme in Groton-Dunstable is it's very cute. It's A plus B plus C plus D equals E. Acceptance, belonging, community. Those are things everybody can get around. Nobody would say, I don't want my child to feel accepted or like they belong or like they're part of a community. And that's really brought a lot of people to the table to be able to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what communities look like that are accepted, belong, and part of a community. And then the D is district multi-tiered systems of support. People also can't argue with supporting families with what they need in order to be successful. All in service of equitable outcomes for students. And I think that's when a lot of the divergent viewpoints come in. We just picked a new health curriculum. You and I talked about that a little bit already. And that was not an easy conversation for everybody. But we based it on the brand new standards, and we did right by students who are learning about that work should be able to see themselves in it.
So I have a closing question. You had a chance to spend time in our community today.
I did.
What most resonated with you about the district as you visited the schools, and why are you interested in leading Westborough Public Schools?
Okay, great. Good, I'll take a little long. What is my stop time? If you don't tell me.
Like 10 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay, the first thing that impressed me was the different entry points that you have for students. From the borough, which I learned a little bit about, and if I didn't mention, I have chocolates from there that I'm going to enjoy on the way home, which was very kind. But also the different spots for folks, for students to learn. I was impressed by the way that your middle school has different programs for the needs of students, so I was impressed by that. I was also impressed by the project-based learning that I saw going on in your schools. I was impressed by the fact that as I walked up and down the hallway, whether I said hi first or not, kids said hi to me. Almost just about every single one of them. As a matter of fact, I met one of the high school students. I didn't get a chance to be at the high school today, but introduced himself to me. He said, you must be a candidate for the superintendent of schools. I said, what gave it away? He said, well, you've got the suit on. And so I got a chance to talk with him a little bit. He said, well, I don't go here, but I work in the after-school program. So there was another indication that this is a very tight-knit community that cares a lot about the progression and the journey of students. And that's really important to me. My doctoral work is on sense of belonging and connectedness in schools. And any of you have been through a doctoral program, you think you're going to write about one thing, but you actually then write about whatever it is that the committee is really going to go, yes, this is a wonderful thing. So you have to zoom in a little bit. And my zoom in was to think about connectedness and belonging, and really moving away from students feeling isolated. I mention that because I did not see one student off on their own today. I saw kids really talking with one another. 100th Day celebration at Fails, talking just about welcomed into the classroom. One of the students said to me, he said, would it be okay if I sat and I listened to the story? He said, well, of course it would be okay. This was story time. But very, very welcoming and very willing to talk with me about what they're learning and knew what they were learning. Right? We're engaged in the process as such that. In addition to that, I noticed that across not just with the school staff, but I've also noticed that with the municipalities, right? A real understanding of what schools are about. And they were really interested in talking with me about budget, of course, but how I build relationships with them to understand what the town and the community is like. And that's a really important relationship to have as a superintendent. I want to work in a district where it's a collaboration. My 3 core values are, I'm surprised I didn't lead with this, students first, always, all of them. Collaboration and cooperation, that doesn't mean we always agree on things, but it does mean that we get to that common understanding process together and we figure out what it takes to cooperate in order to implement that. And then my last one is being intentional and reflective. And I've morphed that a little bit. I used to say go slow to go fast. People don't like it when you say that because they think that you're going to maybe drag your feet on an initiative. But the intentional piece is that you do what you say you're going to do, and then you're reflective about it along the way in case you need to make changes. And I really did feel like looking through your budget presentations or your strategic plan or the principals talking about what they do in their buildings. It is most definitely a team effort here in Westborough, and one of my favorite things to do is build a team and pull together people who are really going to understand what kids need and what families need. So that was confirmed today for sure. If I didn't think that already, I would have thought that at the end of the time.
Awesome. And why are you interested in leading Westborough Public Schools? More than just a warm and welcoming place
More than
to
just
work.
a warm welcoming. Well, I also think that this is very much like the communities that I've been in. And I think that's important for a match also. This is a very high performing community, right? So I know that if we were to just look at MCAS scores, we would come out looking at a very high academic performing community. But what I also know about high academic performing communities is that you have to be super careful too about the subgroups of students. And I know Westborough is also, like any school district in Massachusetts, is changing. Right, the face of our school district and the makeup of our school districts is changing. And I find that very engaging because that means I have to pay attention to what those subgroups look like and how we're going to create school systems that can really continue to meet the needs of all students. And I also, one more thing, can I do one more? Okay. I also, very engaged, teachers were very engaged to talk with me today about data. And that's not always the case. Data can be scary for folks, but they were interested in talking to me about building a data culture, and not just data quantitatively, but also stories and narratives, and really being able to have more data to universally design learning, which was something that came up quite a bit today too. And the way that I think we do that most effectively is we put information in front of teachers. And as you move up into the middle school and the high school, that's when your data sources start to become less quantitatively. And your middle school and high school, well, I didn't get to talk to too many high school teachers, but middle school teachers were really into that conversation. And that's something that's important to me too, that we get curious about what our kids can do. And you can do that through talking to them, but you also need some data sources. So that's another reason why.
Nice, thank you. Anything else you want to share with the group before we wrap it up?
I would, just like you started at the beginning, I would like to thank everybody in Westborough that has treated me so kindly today. I'm not sure if I shared this with this group, but I think I had a selection of maybe 5 or 6 different sandwiches for lunch. There were chips, there was Coke. If I ate everything that was there, I probably wouldn't have been able to finish the afternoon. And the other thing I would like to do is just honor the fact that this is a very important decision for any community. You know, who is the superintendent of schools? Who is that person who is very much, in my mind, is still a teacher first, is never not an administrator, is always needing to understand and know what that feels like, which I've done both of those things for most of my career, and then can trust somebody with the piece of being a public figure. And one of the things that I pride myself on is really being able to understand what kind of leader I need to be in the room of people that I'm speaking with or talking with, whichever stakeholder that is. So just as much as I know this is an important decision for you, it's also an important decision for me too, in the sense that I want to make sure that I make good on all three of those things anywhere that I go. And I really feel like Westborough is a place for me to do that, and that was confirmed today after I got to move around in all of your spaces. So I hope this is not the last time we talk. I appreciate your time this evening, and I think, do I hand off to you?
Yeah, sure.
Is there a door? Do I go out that door and then this door?
No.
Or how does that work?
We're just going to say thank you so much
Okay.
for being here, and just like...
Oh, thank you. So we're just going to take like a short break while our next candidate comes in, and Kristin can go home and finally put her feet up and get some rest. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves, and we'll gather back together in just a few minutes. Thanks. All right, everyone, we're going to move on to our next candidate that we have here. Join me in welcoming our second candidate of the evening, Allison Borchers.
Thank you.
And Allison, you can just share a little bit about yourself, your current position, and some of your other experiences.
Sure. First of all, just thank you for having me. I am truly honored to be here. I kind of knew a little bit about Westborough when I applied to this, and by reputation, certainly. And did a little more research before I applied and looked around, and everything I've seen has been very impressive. And I have to say, my visit today really cemented my interest in the position. The staff that I met, the students that I met, it was a tremendous experience overall. So I want to sort of say to you, you've got a great thing here, and I hope you are aware of that. People were welcoming, they were kind, they were thoughtful, they were really interested in thinking about the future of their schools and how to continue to sort of do the community proud. So that was a wonderful thing to experience, sort of boots on the ground, first day. Why I am interested in this in the first place, I think, has kind of three parts, and I'm going to dive into that if I have time for that. So the first part is really why leadership. Why did I get into educational leadership to begin with? And I have to say, it had to do with experience I had in the classroom. I was a middle school teacher, and middle school is a fun time. If you haven't spent a lot of time in middle school, it's a hard time of life. For many of us, it was a painful time of life, and yet kids are great. They're really fun to work with. They're funny and open and eager, and intellectually, there's sort of all sorts of things are happening for them. I noticed this thing with my students, and particularly with some of my best students, that their notion of what school was about, and the thing they were reflecting back in one way or another, was the notion of school being a thing you sort of get through to get to the next thing. And I found that troubling. I really wanted school to be better than that, to be something meaningful for students, a place where they could learn something important about the world, about themselves, and hopefully develop some skills so that they could actually go on and pursue something that they really felt strongly about or cared about or were interested in. So a place where really meaningful educational things happen. That's what I want for schools. Westborough really struck me in part because I have been really impressed by what I've seen online. I know a little bit about your reputation within the wider community. Superintendents and assistant superintendents all talk to each other, and we hear about things. You've had stability, you've had community support, and I really like some of what I've seen in your strategic priorities. And I think it seems like a great place. It's a little more like where I grew up. I currently work in Westwood, another West town, which is a little less diverse, a little less diverse in all ways, both in terms of the demographics of the place, but also, in terms of economics, in terms of everything else you can imagine. So I like the range. I like the range of ideas as well as the range of demographics and sort of representation in this place. So that's interesting to me. And I think finally, I want to say a little bit about the superintendency and what I think that is. My role right now is very inward facing. An assistant superintendent is this great job, but it's a lot behind the scenes. I work with staff primarily. I do professional development and support of staff. I do a lot of things around the hiring process. But I'm really interested in the project of working with the wider community around engaging with the schools and supporting the schools. I actually think public school in the United States is a great enterprise and should be something that we invest in and take very seriously. Public schools are places where every kid gets to come in and get something and take that with them. And education is a thing nobody can take away from you. That's valuable, and it really should be something that we all care about and sort of honor and contribute to. And so I think the superintendent has the job of listening to the community, engaging with the community, and doing everything I can to advocate for support of the wider community of the schools. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. I have a question that came to us from a community member. Could you share more about the first job that launched your career in education? How did that lay the foundation for where you are today? And how might those early experiences influence your work as superintendent of schools?
Great. So my first job in terms of education was working for a non-for-profit organization in Boston called the Stepping Stone Foundation. And I want to say a thing about why I got there in the first place, which is I had this moment after college where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I had a lot of debt and I needed to do something quickly. And I temped for a little bit, and while I was temping, I was sort of thinking, and the thing that struck me is this project of schools is something that I felt like I could really spend a lifetime on. It wasn't going to get boring because it means a lot to me. And the opportunity at Stepping Stone came up. It was admissions coordinator for Stepping Stone, so I would go boots on the ground all over the Boston public schools and recruit kids from 4th and 5th grade classrooms who are interested in engaging in a program where they came to extra school, believe it or not, on Thursdays and Saturdays. So Thursday after school, Saturday all day, and the goal of that program was to help students develop what they needed academically to apply for and get into independent schools in the area. And additionally, we ran support programs, so once students were at independent schools, they had tutoring support. Parents had support navigating the financial aid process because those schools are not cheap, and we had to really pitch in. Through that program, I started getting into classroom teaching, and I think that program really was eye-opening to me. Many of the families that I worked with, the students I worked with were first-generation students. They were the first people who were born in the United States, and families had incredibly strong feelings about making sure that kids had opportunities, and they wanted every opportunity possible. So I think in many ways, those experiences really sort of set the stage for everything that followed.
I have a question that came from many parents. What does diversity mean to you? And could you please share an example of your actions to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in classrooms and schools?
Great. So I think there are a lot of, there are so many ways to think about diversity. there's a sort of the diversity that has to do with your identity, who you are, where you're from, your culture, your background, your history, your gender, your sexual orientation. There is also things around sort of life experience. Where have I been? Where am I affiliated? Where did I go to college? Where did I grow up? What's my family? What's my history? And then there's just the diversity of ideas. What do I believe? What do I value? What do I care about? What's my religion? Those are all things that contribute to kind of diversity of a place. And I think they're all kind of deserving of some sort of support and recognition. I really do believe that a diverse kind of workforce, a diverse community can be stronger. It's not easy because with that diversity comes disagreement. We're not gonna all agree, and I think that's okay. I think we have to sort of figure out how to navigate through diversity in a way that sort of helps us learn to sort of agree disagreeably, or disagree agreeably, whichever one it is, you know what I meant. And to kind of figure out if we can learn to listen for good ideas, even from people with whom we tend to disagree. I think that's a really important piece. So that's what it means. What have I worked on? Within Westwood, I've worked on a lot, to be honest. So in my role as assistant superintendent, I sort of started off with a major professional development initiative, I think in 2018, where we had PD devoted to this topic of what does it mean to be a diverse school system, because we were seeing our diversity really increase in the school system. A lot had changed in the last 20 years, and the school system hadn't really done anything about that. And as a result, our sense was, and what we were hearing was that not all kids felt like they had a place. They didn't feel welcome, they didn't feel accepted. And so we felt like we had to start to do some things to address that. So we had kind of a launch with some professional development there. We also have looked at the ways that our curriculum needs updating in order to sort of represent what's going on in the world. You know, you can't have the same curriculum for 50 years and not make changes. And we've done that thoughtfully and carefully. I want to make sure that what we put in front of kids is good quality and not tokenistic. You know, we don't put something in front of a student just because of who wrote it. We put it in front of a student because it's good, and because it'll help them learn something. I think the other piece we've done is we've looked at hiring and hiring processes and hiring practices. I helped the Westwood Public Schools join an organization called the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education. And through that, we've really looked at doing a better job recruiting a more diverse pool of candidates to the organization. You know, have we hit it out of the park in terms of actually hiring people? No, not yet. And we're still working on that. I think part of that is working on what is the culture of the place. Is it a place where people, when they come to work, are gonna feel like they belong there too? So those are some of the things. It's been a part of what I do, and I work very directly with the district team on that.
We had a question from a few people who are interested in what your initial plan would be to engage with Westborough families and learn more about our community.
Great. I think entry planning is really important, particularly when you've had a leader in place for a long time and it's a big transition. So I would want to really start early and take a good while to get out and talk with people and listen. And that means not only inviting folks into the district, but going out to where people are. I would love to come visit in terms of your kind of local associations, anything that you are proud of in Westborough in particular. If you've got a sports league that everybody likes to show up for, I will be there. Just to sort of hear from you, what do you love about this place? What matters to you? What do you value? What are you worried about? And I would do that both outside the organization and inside the organization. It's important to kind of have a real sense of what are the strengths, what are the challenges, what are you aspiring to, what do you want to see concretely happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Those are the things that I would sort of try to pull together, reflect back to you with the question, did I hear you right? Did I hear you? Did I get it right? And then, whatever those findings are at the end of the day, can inform the next iteration of strategic planning that we do within the district, both internally with the team and with the school committee.
A teacher wants to know, what does high quality instruction look like in a classroom in 2024? And what are the indicators of great teaching and learning?
Oh, that's it. I love that. So I think, I like that it was put in terms of high quality. A lot of times people use the word rigor, right? And I think that's an interesting word because it's understood differently by different people. But when I think about what I would want for a student in any grade school system, here are the things. First of all, students need to learn the habit of curiosity. how to ask questions and how to follow up on the line of those questions. So how to engage with material in a way where you are constantly sort of thinking about, what does it mean? What is this about? Why should I want to learn more? Great teachers can really inspire that. Secondly, I think the things that we ask kids to do should promote real, authentic engagement. I think too often, really good school systems can be places that teach compliance, and I don't think that that's particularly a virtue. I think, it's important to follow rules, it's important to be kind of a good citizen and a good community member, but it's also important to learn to think and to sort of not just do something because I told you to. And I think we want to make sure that our school does really push kids to engage in an authentic way that's not just doing something because I said so. I think we want to have kids learn how to look for evidence. So not only are they asking questions, but they're seeking evidence in response to answers so that they learn some sort of academic rigor around that. What does it mean to actually know a thing? What does it mean to really believe a thing? What are the ways that you do that? How do you kind of decide? I would want to make sure we teach students to listen and be curious not only about ideas that are like theirs, but ideas that are not like theirs. That sort of openness to other opinions, perspectives, and experiences is important. I don't think you can really engage in the world as fully unless you learn to do that. And then finally, I really think kids need to learn some habits around work. Less popular idea, but it's true. The reality is that sort of engagement with high quality kind of teaching should also sometimes involve getting kids used to the idea, in order to kind of get places, sometimes you have to sort of knuckle down and get something done. And that sort of practice and sort of kind of hard work and deliberate practice is what actually makes kids sort of fluent thinkers, people who can really sort of see things more clearly over time. So all that kind of bundled together is stuff I'd be looking for in a really great classroom.
Question from a parent. AI, artificial intelligence, is quickly becoming an everyday part of our lives. How do you view the role that AI may play in education for both staff and students?
Is this the time to admit that I'm terrified? I'm not sure. I do actually think, I've said this out loud to some group of people today. I think it was maybe department heads from the high school. The artificial intelligence phenomenon is one of the things I've seen in technology that usually when I learn about technology, the more I learn, the more comfortable I get. I'm going to admit right now, with AI, the more I learn, the less comfortable I get. And I think it's important for schools to be talking about this a lot right now, maybe yesterday. I do think it's going to really transform a lot within education. I've gone out and kind of done some reading and work on my own. I've been to some kind of good forums where people are doing a lot of this work. And I think some of it's very powerful. I think some of it we don't yet have a kind of common set of norms or ethics about how it's going to roll. So there's no real sort of, it's like having a whole bunch of cars that we're going to put kids into without seatbelts, is what it feels like a little bit to me. So I do think communities really need to engage in this, think about it seriously. It's certainly infiltrated the work world in a big way, and I'm not sure what it's going to do in schools. I do think developmentally, kids need to struggle productively, and when you take that away, I'm not sure what happens. So there's something about that notion of kind of the process of doing something yourself. And it worries me, sort of the absence of that. So I'm understanding we need to do a good job teaching about it, teaching kids to use it, all of that, but I also feel like we got a lot of work to do at schools and as communities.
A few teachers and parents have asked various questions about this. Westborough has one of the state's top achieving fine and performing arts programs. In what ways do you envision yourself as an advocate so that the district can continue to grow as leaders in music and fine arts education?
That's great. Thank you for asking that. I am a fan of the arts myself. I have no visual artistic capacity whatsoever, but I do like to go to museums and such. But I grew up with music. My grandfather was a music teacher. I was a musician as a kid. I studied for a long time, played in groups and sang in groups in college. I think the arts are essential in part because they tap into our humanity. I mean, I think there's something about being engaged in music and art that's very important. I don't know all of the programs and everything that you've got here and how it works. I will say, like everything else, I feel like everything that's good has to sort of be in balance, and there's never enough time to do everything we want and never enough money to do everything we want. So I never want to promise anything without knowing what I'm getting into. I will say, though, that I do think making sure if you've got programming that works for kids and you've got it kind of K to 12, making sure you continue to offer that and provide that programming seems important to me.
Just 2 more questions, so you're doing great. Doing great on time. This question is from several teachers, parents, and community members. How would you approach navigating opposing viewpoints among families, teachers, or the community at large to continue a positive, inclusive, and safe environment for our students and staff?
I think that's an interesting question. I mean, I think folks, there are kind of hot button things that people disagree about. I know, flag display is a thing people disagree about. Books, people disagree about. Sex ed education, people disagree about. I do think one vantage point that's important is that a lot of family members who come to the table are coming from the perspective of an individual family, and that absolutely they should do. It's important to advocate for yourself and your child and your values. The schools really have to take the perspective of everybody. We have to sort of advocate for programs and practices that work across a very broad spectrum. And so we need to be thoughtful about what we decide to do and what we don't, and we have to kind of weigh all those considerations. In general, our goal is to make sure that kids feel welcome, that they feel safe, that they feel challenged and supported, and the steps that we take, I want to make sure do that. I wouldn't want to undermine that for any student. Students should feel like they can have whatever political affiliation that they want and be able to talk about that in class in a way that's respectful and thoughtful and not feel bad about that. I think that's really important. I think student groups that want to be advocates, they should have the ability to do that within a school environment. That's important too. So I think it's an issue that's challenging everywhere right now. I would say my goal would be to listen carefully to what people's concerns are, make sure I hear them correctly, and reflect back what I hear, and be really upfront about what I can do and what I feel like isn't in line with the values of the organization or the mission of the organization. And that's really my responsibility as a superintendent.
All right, and our closing question is, you've had a chance to spend time in our community today. What most resonated with you about the district as you visited the schools, and why are you interested in leading Westborough Public Schools?
That's great. I think, a couple things that people said to me, and I'll say one statement that I heard this afternoon from a paraprofessional, and then just one moment in the class. So earlier in the day, I got to go to the Early Childhood Center, and I got to just hang out in classrooms and also at Hastings. And I was in one of the classrooms I was in. The teacher said, this student is new, and her name is Allison. And I got to hang out with the new kid named Allison, which weirdly made me very happy. And because she's in kindergarten, I got to hang out like from down here. What I got to see firsthand is what I heard about from teachers, which is a child who is new, who didn't know anyone, who looked a little spooked. She was incredibly quiet, and I saw kids being kind and a teacher working to sort of very gently make sure she kind of got brought into the fold. And I thought that's the kind of place I want to be. So that was one moment. The other, in the staff forum this afternoon, I had asked the question of, what is great about this place? What do you like about this place? What do you hope for this place? And a woman in the front raised her hand and said, I'm a paraprofessional here. I've worked in other districts, and here I feel like I'm part of a team. Before I felt invisible, like I was there to do support, but nobody really cared. I was just sort of in the background working with kids. Here, people ask me what I think. They talk to me as if I matter, and that makes a big difference to me. And I thought that's a great thing too. So a culture where people's input is valued, and a culture where children are really welcomed and sort of brought into the fold. Those are two things I saw that I'd love to be part of.
Great, and anything else you want to add about why you're interested in leading Westborough Public Schools?
I don't know. I mean, I've been really impressed by what I've seen so far. The conversations I've had, the questions I've gotten actually have been really interesting to me. I don't know. I really do love public education. I think it's an incredible thing that we have here, and we should take good care of it together. And I'd like to be part of that here.
Great. And any other words to close it out for us?
I could sing. So I was at the symphony last night and got to see Renee Fleming. So I'm not about to get up and perform anywhere because, I got to see an actual diva do actual diva things with like sparkly dress and everything like that. No, I will say this, it's a tremendous thing. In our country right now, it feels to me like education's kind of become a hot spot for people to engage in discourse that's not all of it is civil. And what I would hope is kind of coming into a place to sort of bring the level of civility that I believe you already have. I've seen how people interact here, and it looks good. And to sort of allow for reasonable disagreement, but also to be kind of clear and fair and kind. Know that if you have children in this district, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from or what you believe, I will always go to bat for them. And I really appreciate your coming out on a really cold night to hang out in an auditorium at a middle-ish school, I guess we're like lower middle school, and meet candidates. It speaks to your investment in this place being great. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Great, so just like last time, we'll take a short little break. You can talk amongst yourselves, stretch your legs until we're ready for our final candidate. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our final candidate. So please join me in welcoming Brian Callaghan. Great. So Brian, you can just introduce yourself, share about your current role and other teaching experiences and leading experiences that you've had.
Sure thing, thank you. And thanks for being here. I think it's important to have community involvement in processes like this one. And for those who are watching at home, I think it's important as well to be engaged that way. This is a very important decision that the community, through their school committee members, need to make. And I'm very excited and thrilled to be here as one of the finalists. So thank you to the selection and interview committee that brought me here. So I am Brian Callaghan, the high school principal, and I'm very proud to be the high school principal and working here in this fabulous district. I've been here for 24 years. I've been in education, this is my 31st year. And I do want you to know, while those years may seem pretty high, I've got a wealth of experience in many, many different capacities. And at the beginning of this year, interestingly enough, at the district leadership team, we were asked, what would be a personal goal, for you for this year and in the future? And right off the bat, I said that I want the last 10 years of my educational career to be as idealistic and energetic as the first 10. And that's a pledge to our staff, to our students, and to you that, that I'm excited about the possibility of finishing my educational career here in Westborough. And I'd be honored to be your superintendent. So I've taught history, I've taught math, I've taught special education. I've been a district administrator of athletics in 2 different districts. Most recently here, when they hired me to teach and to be the district athletic director in 2000. 6 years later, I was asked to be the assistant principal, and I said yes. A few years after that, I was asked to be the principal by Marianne O'Connor, former superintendent, and I said yes. So here I am. No one asked me to do this, but I am ready and prepared to say yes to you and to our students and staff to be the best, most dedicated superintendent I can be. I care about this district in that way. I've dedicated myself to this district and served it proudly and with integrity. And I certainly find the value in the work. I'm a purpose-driven person. I am one that leads by example. And I'm also very proud of the fact that that I bring to the job a sense of service, because that runs through my family.
Thank you. I have a question from a community member. Can you share more about the first job that launched your career in education, and how did that lay a foundation for where you are today? And how might those early experiences influence your work as a superintendent of schools?
Okay, good question. 3 parts. The first one, I actually went to college to be a lawyer. And it was my sophomore year in college that I realized I needed to switch professions. It was really the end of my sophomore year. It was May, and I got home. It was late in the week. I had the weekend to sort of recover from final exams. Laundry bag was still full. And I get woken up Monday morning by my mother, who taught for 44 years as an elementary teacher. And she said, "Get up, you've got to work." I said, "I just got home a couple of days ago." "What do you mean, work?" She said, "You're substituting." So that's what we did. We got up, and I substituted a 4th grade class at the Allen Street Elementary School. And it was there that my life changed for the better. I substituted a classroom in which there was a student who brought some challenges with his behavior, and I think we would call it today dysregulation. But back then, we didn't know what to really label it. So we worked with him. I worked with him up here on the table. Every other student was working. My brother also was the other teacher in the classroom, which is an interesting dynamic, but not part of this story for now. I'm working with James at the table, and he's having a tough time. And across the hall comes another veteran teacher and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working with James." Now, James doesn't work there. He works over there. And she pointed to the corner of the classroom with a chair and a partition to block James when he got dysregulated. Like I said, that changed my life for the better. And I knew then, when I told that teacher that James was working with me, that I had the courage of high conviction to put students first. And I went home and told my mother what had happened. She said, "Well, were you disrespectful?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, apologize to the veteran teacher anyway, and keep doing what you're doing." So how that has informed my practice, and I alluded to it just briefly, but I've never forgotten about James. When we say all students under our roof or in our classroom, we better act like it's all students. We better believe and have the resources and are planning to have all students in mind. Every student. That's part of my core value is inclusivity. And for when students are included and they have that sense of belonging, they can inevitably and inherently see the value of themselves as a human being. And that not only makes them better, that makes the community they're with better. So we all stand to gain from that. So I thank James for dawning on me and flipping that switch. Following year, switched my major to history and education.
Question from many parents. What does diversity mean to you? And could you please share an example of your actions to prioritize diversity, equity, inclusion in classrooms and schools?
Okay. So, diversity is many things. Diversity comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes and backgrounds, and hence the core value around inclusivity, that when we welcome and have everyone feel as though they're part of something, really good things can happen. So whether that be cultural differences, whether that be intellectual differences, whether that be, again, gender, sizes, all of it. We have to have great respect for everyone and plan accordingly. So what does that planning look like? Well, first and foremost, it involves having the belief that every student belongs there. And also planning accordingly so that you can differentiate and have students be able to access the content or the skills in different ways. I think it also means that we're providing the proper training for teachers. That very specific training that will help them serve that student in front of them that might not be the same as everyone else. That includes special education training, that includes cultural competency training, and I think you need to provide time for teachers and students, at least at the older levels, time to collaborate and work through some of those differences together. Because I think when you realize and feel that you're, working with other people, that strengthens your resolve to do the right thing and to be prepared and to walk into that classroom if you're a teacher, feeling confident that you can serve that student. I guess what I mean to say there is, the more we can make this part of our mainstream conversations at team meetings, department meetings, informal, formal, collegial conversations, the more we can serve our students. What specific actions, I think this is the third part, what specific actions have I taken? Well, it started on that first day of substituting, and I haven't forgotten it, but what we have done to promote diversity, or to at least have that attitude and belief be part of our core values here at the high school. We formed probably 7 or 8 years ago a Gender Equity and Social Inclusion Committee, made up initially of staff, and then we invited students to join us. How are we doing? How are we doing on that belief and that value of welcoming all? We got that data, we looked at it, it informed our practice, we made changes to our curriculum, to our practices, to our messaging, to our clubs and activities. We began, with the process of really evaluating our own bias around our traditions. And we made changes accordingly. I think I've also fostered open communication with students, because they can see diversity maybe sometimes a lot better than adults. And I have the benefit of working with very mature, respectful adolescents at the high school level. So I can go and ask them. I can go invite them to a conversation. And that open dialogue is so important. It's so important for adults as well. But students told us what they wanted and what they needed. And we provided it. There's just an incredibly talented group of students, young adults, recently this year, and they've been encouraged for a couple of years with some of our diverse staff members, but they formed the Black Student Union. And I know that they helped with the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and they're so proud. We've fostered for years weeks in which we can explicitly talk, participate in, and basically take action on important pieces of diversity. And those weeks are called Unity Weeks at the high school. So we've been doing those for years. And we've fostered time out of the classroom, not too much instructional time, but some time out of classroom to allow students to have those conversations. And they've been very helpful, very beneficial to improving our school culture at the high school.
Okay, many people were curious, what would your initial plan be to engage with Westborough families and learn more about our community? Which is a challenging question for you, Mr. Callaghan, because you know a little bit about our community.
I do. I'm very familiar with the community, and I hope the community somewhat is familiar with me in terms of my record and my dedication. However, there's a lot to be learned in both of those respects. I would engage in a very formal and well-articulated entry plan. I would invite all stakeholders, 15 or 30 minutes to speak with me. I could set up an appointment, and I would walk through basically 4 questions that I would ask any stakeholder that wanted to meet with me over the summer or into the fall. And those 4 questions would be, what is working well that you're proud of here? What is a challenge? Where are there opportunities that you see for students, for your family, for teachers? And I think the 4th one would be, what are some of the traditions that you hold dear that you do not want to change? I think engaging with stakeholders is a strength of mine. I think building consensus is a strength of mine. And I think there is great opportunity to, have that two-way partnership and feedback with those that we're serving. I really do.
This is from a teacher. What does high-quality instruction look like in a classroom in 2024? And what are the indicators of great teaching and learning?
Okay. So some of you may or may not know, but I'm actually teaching a class right now. We had a teacher who had pursued other opportunities, and I was thrusted into teaching a business class. Not so dissimilar to an experience that I had where I taught 12 weeks of a history class a couple of years ago when a teacher went on maternity leave. So I love the classroom. I love the classroom. The components of high-level instruction are supporting the teacher to have the resources and the materials that he or she or they need to be successful. It's first and foremost, supporting the teacher. And you can ask a teacher, what is it that you need and how can I help? Secondly, research-based practices. There's a lot of great research out there, neuroscience particularly, that speaks to how students can be engaged at every level. At every level. How can they be motivated? I think content-specific professional development is very important for teachers. In a classroom, I would love to see discourse, more on the kid's side than the teacher's side. But I'd love to, hear, I heard it at Mill Pond today, even at Armstrong to a degree, where they were celebrating the 100th day. And a second grader asked, "Are you 100? I said, "Ask me later." But there has to be discourse. There has to be academic discourse. There has to be time for individual learning. There has to be time for group learning. There has to be formative assessment. There has to be checks for understanding. And then, those assessments give you data. Let's analyze that data. Let's see what it tells us. Let that data inform our practice or refine practice. And you got to do all that in 54 minutes. But at the high school level, what's nice, and I'm not so familiar, obviously, with with the younger grades, but I know it starts with the teachers walking through their classroom door with a sense of confidence that they can do the job that we're asking them to do. I call that teacher efficacy. And similarly, we're going to make sure that our students walk through that front door of the school being and feeling safe. Because no learning can take place, no teaching can take place if people don't feel safe to do so. That's physically, that's socially, and that's emotionally. And you want high-level instruction? I think we work on being committed to some of those aspects of a good classroom instruction.
This is a question from a parent. AI, artificial intelligence, is quickly becoming an everyday part of our lives. How do you view the role that AI may play in education for both staff and students?
That's a good question. There has to be ethical use of AI first and foremost. So again, I'm going to connect it back to core values. When we talk about integrity, we talk about mutual respect. We have to understand both the benefits and the drawbacks of artificial intelligence. And most importantly, how to use it ethically. That's really what we want our students to be able to do when they're outside of our learning environment and off doing great things beyond the walls of our schools. I have seen it used effectively. I actually have a friend of mine who's a professor of mathematics in Stanford, and he sends me lesson plans that are generated by AI that are differentiated based on math level. I know that there are some teachers that use an app called Diffit that helps them take a text and really modify it to a grade level so that the learner can access the content. Widely successful. I think we can also use AI in the classroom to help students brainstorm, take away maybe that writer's block. But again, if we're talking about ethical use, it's not to do the writing. It's not to do the writing. That's a value I think we need to uphold strictly. But to brainstorm some ideas.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
It is.
Question we got from a few teachers and parents. Westborough, as you know, has one of the state's top achieving fine and performing arts programs. In what ways do you envision yourself as an advocate so the district can continue to grow as leaders in music and fine arts education?
Show up and attend the events. That's one way, right? So through presence and support, being there and talking to the families of our fine arts students at all grade levels. Arts in Common, I think, is a community thing that I hope is still well attended. I've been to the first few, but the last couple have been a little rainy. So not that I'm a fair weather fan, but we certainly can support the arts that way as a community. Again, it's a we. It's not me. It's we. I think that the fine arts in and of itself, if you look at the research, promotes human development in a very positive way. It also greatly helps students be successful in just about every other academic area. There's some good research about that. I would also say that a very active fine arts program, a successful fine arts program, which ours is, and I'm very proud to watch these performances and concerts and art shows. It brings pride. It brings spirit. It uplifts at any grade level, any of us. And the more we do it, the better we might feel. But I think ultimately, given all of that, it strengthens our culture. It strengthens our culture. I think we can all agree, to some variety anyway, that we all love music, for example. There's artwork in the form of clay or drawings, that we can find inspiration. Like, that's something we share and we have in common. And I think that's one thing we can agree we should be promoting. So I certainly would do that as a superintendent.
2 more questions to go.
Okay, are we good on time?
Good on time.
Okay.
This question came from several teachers, parents, and community members. How would you approach navigating opposing viewpoints among families, teachers, or the community at large to continue a positive, inclusive, and safe environment for our students and staff?
That's a good question. If I could take 5 seconds to think about that for a sec. So I've long felt that the schools must be above the community they serve. And if we are to engage our students into healthy and proper development, we need to make sure that there is civility in our discourse. How do we do that? Well, you make it clear what our values are around discourse, and you commit to civility. But you also engage in active listening. There is concern or fear or worry that generates someone's idea to be in disagreement, or they simply do not understand. So when you bring people together, not push them away, you can try to find that common ground, perhaps even a compromise. And that's, again, I mentioned it earlier. I feel as though I've got great experience, and I am very comfortable with the uncomfortable. And building that consensus is something that I have done, that I'm feel I'm very skilled at. And I think we can engage people into understanding what our viewpoints are. And again, finding that common ground. There is more in common with people within this community than not. And as challenging as some of the conversations that have been happening, I still have hope and faith that we can put serious differences aside and put our students at the focus.
For a closing question, you've had a chance to spend some time in other schools today and in our community. What most resonated with you about the district as you visited the other schools, and why are you interested in leading Westborough Public Schools?
So, I don't think I learned anything new, but I was very proud and excited that what I see in the high school is also happening at a high level in Mill Pond and at Armstrong. And that is, very simply, passionate, talented, committed, dedicated teachers putting students first. And students, the kindergartner, the second grader, the fourth grader doing math, they're engaged and they love coming to their schools. And I think that is the same at Gibbons, and that's definitely the same at the high school. And I was just really thrilled to see that. I was expecting to see that, but I guess I was not as, I wasn't anticipating, how fun that would be to hear the different grade levels and the different teachers and the coordinators talk about teaching and learning and their kids. So for all of you and those that are watching, you've got an incredibly talented faculty and counselors and staff here in this district. You've got a wonderfully respectful and engaged and smart students, I would be honored and privileged to be your superintendent.
Thank you, Brian. Anything else you want to share as we wrap up our evening of candidates?
I will just reiterate how incredibly thoughtful and professional this process is. I mean, I've gone through a hiring process on the other side. It's a little bit easier, but I will say, the last time I interviewed was for the assistant principal position. And that was a few years ago. And the committee, the process, made me feel comfortable, made me humble. But it also really convinced me that the reasons I have stayed in Westborough have all been the right reasons. The people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone who joined us in person and everyone who's watching online. Remember that we want your feedback. We are going to take it very seriously, so you can find the feedback form via Parent Square or on the main page of the district's website. Thank you so much and have a great night.